Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. So appreciate you guys taking the time. I see some fellow board members. Hey, Emmy. Hey, Tegan and Sara. Maybe just Sara. Maybe Tegan. Maybe both of you. Thank you so much for joining us. I think I see Affinity. Much easier than I thought it was going to be. I think we're about. Oh, we did it.
Hey,
Mackenzie, hi.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm just like turning up my volume so I can hear you.
All good. I know that you have a deep social media following, so this is probably something you can do in your sleep, but personally, I'm very proud that we were able to do this, and it was so much easier than I thought, so thank you.
Success. Thank you for having me.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. My name is Aditi Hardikar, and I have the privilege of being a board member at the Tegan and Sara Foundation, and my day job is working at the Obama Foundation on the south side of Chicago. Now, the mission of the Tegan and Sara Foundation is to improve the lives of LGBTQ plus women and girls. And at the start of the global pandemic that is COVID-19, we thought it was important to respond to this crisis by issuing microgrants throughout the country and Canada to organizations on the front lines of dealing with this crisis and supporting our community in this time of need. And so we, after a round of initial grants, we were able to issue microgrants to more than 23 organizations, issuing almost $30,000 around the country and around Canada. And then even more recently, in response to the ongoing crisis and violence against the Black community, specifically Black LGBTQ plus folks, we decided to issue another round of grants. So in total, we were proud to issue almost $50,000 in microgrants, and we want to thank everyone for their support to make sure that folks like Affinity are continuing to do the amazing work that they're doing and have the resources to do so. And today I am really honored to be joined by Mackenzie Mack, the new executive director at Affinity Community Services in Chicago, one of our TSF grantees doing amazing work. Mackenzie, welcome. We are so excited to have you here. And I know there's so much going on, so much on your plate. So I appreciate you joining us. Why don't you, if you don't mind, introduce yourself to everyone and let them know what you were doing before you came to Affinity.
Sure. So my name is Mackenzie Mack. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm originally from the south side of Chicago, and for about, I want to say 14 years, I've been doing racial justice work. So specifically anti-racism education, a lot of digital organizing work. Have always been interested in social justice education and the ways in which we can use it to develop our skills for accountability and develop our skill for communication. So that's a little bit a sum of what I've done. And I probably don't want to go on because I know we have limited time, but I think that's like the short version.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And now you have taken the reins at Affinity. And I just want to say, disclaimer, it's one of my favorite organizations. I have had the pleasure of getting to know some of your fellow leadership team and some of your members. And I know that because you've joined, you obviously share in that admiration. Can you let us know what led you to joining Affinity and what your vision is for the organization, building off of 25 years of such great work?
Wow, I love that question. What led me to the organization, I really think it was my grandmother. So my grandmother passed last year around May. And at the time, she had gotten sick. I had been traveling a lot because I was former ED of an organization called Art Plus Feminism. So I was traveling a lot. I was living in South Africa at the time. And before that had been living in different countries for 3 years, working specifically on knowledge equity. And sort of a lot of work around digital organizing. And so I had a conversation with my grandmother, and she was just like, you know what, you're doing all this great work, and it's time for you to come home. She's like, we need you, and specifically on the north side, which is where I was born and raised. I mean, on the south side where I was born and raised. For some Chicago folks who are hearing that, who just heard me say north side, are probably like, no, you better represent the south side.
We'll edit that out. Just kidding. I don't know how to do that.
So, I came back And I was kind of looking for opportunities because I'm like, especially after my grandmother passed, I thought, she told me before she passed what she wanted me to do. And I felt specifically called to do work on the south side of Chicago. So when I heard about the role at Affinity and had some sort of contact with their programs in the past, I thought, you know what, they're looking for an executive director. I want to apply. I love this organization. I don't think, I've been to a lot of places. I've lived in a lot of countries, and I've never seen anything like Affinity Community Services before. And I feel like as somebody who's a younger person coming into an organization that is so truly and genuinely intergenerational, I've never been in a community where I've seen so much intergenerational leadership. And also as a Black, queer, non-binary person, honestly, I've never been in a community where I've seen so many Black, lesbian, Black, queer, specifically women who are working together, who are over the age of 20. And it matters to be able to see that, to be able to say, wow, we do live to be, 30. We live to be 40. We live to be 50. We live to be 65. And as we age, we can still be in community where we're doing activism work and advocacy work, and where we're really loving on each other and caring for one another.
Yeah, you're totally right. It's hard to be what we can't see. And especially when a lot of the messages that we get sent are that we don't survive and that, we can't thrive. It's amazing to walk into the headquarters at Affinity and see such a range of ages and experiences.
For sure. It's beautiful. It really is.
Yeah. Well, the work that you all do, that Affinity does, is exactly the type of work that TSF likes to fund, is grassroots level work, direct services work that really has an intersectional lens. And you shared a bit about that intersectionality, the intergenerationality. Can you share a little bit more about the history of Affinity and specifically the work that y'all are doing in the community and that TSF is specifically supporting?
Sure. So Affinity was started in 1995. Oops, I'm sorry. Did I pause for a second? Okay,
it's all good.
I'm back.
You're back.
So, so Affinity was founded in 1995. So for those folks who go to affinity95.org, we're like, what does this 95 mean? It's like, it means that we're really proud of when we were founded. And specifically, Affinity was founded by a group of Black lesbians who, wanted to engage specifically with activism work, and even more specifically on the south side of Chicago. So even for me, even as the ED, when I think about that, I think, wow, 25 years ago, there was no Twitter. There was no this idea of being able to engage with Black queer people, with Black lesbians, with Black bisexual people, with Black intersex people, with Black trans people, and to be able to do that in such a way where you wouldn't necessarily have to live in the same town or in the same city just wasn't something that was as possible as it is now. And so those, one of our founders, Chris Smith, I spoke to her earlier today, and she said, you know what? We were a group of radical Black dykes, is what she said. And, that is sort of like the legacy of Affinity. So in terms of the kind of work that we do a lot of programming. And I think for folks who are not within the community, they may not realize that we do, for example, we have virtual office hours that happen every Tuesday and Thursday that are open for any folks to join, either to join by Zoom or open for folks to join by Facebook Live. We do HIV and AIDS specific work. So we have a COIL program that focuses a lot on community dialogue. So, building education through community dialogue and in a way that doesn't present education as a hierarchy, where you have to go to a specific place or you have to look up to a specific person. But how are we building those bonds within community where you can learn something from somebody that you look up to who lives down the street from you? Or you can learn, something specifically about HIV activism work from folks who, you've gone to a support group with. In addition to the fact that we also have groups and peer-led groups that are led by folks in our community that, again, are intergenerational and that focus specifically on building these spaces that people can go to be able to find community, to be able to talk about activism, and also to be able to just be loved on, which I probably said that already before, but I'll say it again. That's so important for Black queer folks, for Black trans folks, for LGBTQ folks, period, to be able to be in a space where you're not only accepted, but where you very genuinely feel loved. Like you are there when you're not there, people wonder where you are. Or people are calling you or texting you and they're like, you know what? You didn't show up to Trailblazers this week. What's going on? Are you okay? How can we support you? How can we be there for you? So we find that work to be incredibly important.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And for those of you who've just joined, my name is Aditi Hardikar. You are live with Tegan and Sara Foundation. I am a board member, and I'm joined by Mackenzie Mack, who is the ED of Affinity Community Services here in Chicago. Now, I really appreciate you talking about the history, because in a time like right now, when folks are like, what do we do? How do we move forward? There's nothing better that you can do than look back to our history. And you and I are both currently in Chicago. It's a shame that we can't physically be together, but we're together in spirit. But
yeah. One day.
Go ahead.
I said
one day. Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
And I know that you grew up here. You mentioned you're from the South Side.
Yeah.
You know, our city has, well, currently our city is experiencing COVID-19 so acutely, and particularly in the Black community. And what this current pandemic is doing is exposing the longstanding pandemic in our city of racial segregation and discrimination that dates back to the beginning of the 1900s through Great Migration. And what I think is so important today is centering the crisis within this longstanding crisis. And although racism and protesting against racism is certainly not new to our city, I think you and I have seen that there's been an even more kind of concerted effort to show up all across the city in terms of protests throughout the city. I think you and I were both at the same protest on Sunday up in Boys Town, standing in solidarity with Black trans women. And I think that, you know, that now that you're at the helm of this organization, whose members and whose community is so, you know, intrinsically tied to both of these experiences, to being Black, queer, to having this history in Chicago, how has the time right now affected and shaped the work that Affinity is doing, and how's the community feeling, and how are you personally feeling?
Yeah. I think that the community is feeling how a lot of us are feeling. I think when the shutdowns initially happened, I think a lot of us felt afraid. And I like to emphasize that, because there's this mythology that Black women, that Black trans people, that Black queer people don't feel fear. You know, people often attempt to force this sort of superhumanization on us. And especially there's this like Black sort of superwoman myth that, you know, there's a limitless amount of energy. That Black women, and specifically Black queer women, have a limitless amount of energy, are never afraid, don't ever not know what to do, even though, like, you know, we're human beings. There's times when we doubt, there's times when we're afraid, there's times when we like have no idea what's coming next or what our next steps to be, because like that's life. And so I think in sort of thinking about that, something that I, you know, thinking about how we're sort of responding to the pandemic, especially with our work at Affinity, I always like to emphasize to myself that Black women specifically are brilliant, but that Black women are not boundless, and that there's a major difference between the two. So we've, you know, definitely responded very quickly, because we were doing all these programs that were in person and that do rely on a lot of sort of like in-person contact in order for them to be sustained. So immediately we moved that programming online. And again, we're working within an intergenerational community. So it's not like if you're working in a community where you have a bunch of like 20 somethings or like, you know, 30 somethings, I don't know, maybe getting up now to like late 30s, you might actually now have some issues, but depending on, right? Depending on those younger communities, where you could just say, yeah, we're just going to do Zoom, or yeah, we're going to be on Facebook Live. Like, there is a learning curve. So for us, it wasn't just about taking those programs online, which I think for a lot of organizations, that was probably an easier transition. For us, it was, how do we ensure that in our work that we are holding to our beliefs and that we're never leaving our Black elders behind? That we're not like, oh, well, if you don't know how to use Zoom, then I guess you won't be able to come to our events, or I guess you won't be able to come to our virtual office hours. It was, hey, Irma, who's our amazing, amazing program coordinator. Irma, can you like do some one-on-ones? Can you like help these members of our community who may not be as sort of like fluent in technology, to help them to be in these programs? And also, I think by helping them, to show them that we want them to be here and that we love and care about them. So that was, you know, definitely a transition. I wasn't with the organization at the beginning of the transition, but from what I've heard, you know, there were some rocky moments, but we were able to sort of get through those things. And I think as we continue to brave the storm of this pandemic, the goal is to make sure that we're sort of like not missing out on people, you know, and that we're casting our net as wide as possible.
Yeah, that's really important. And I love that quote. We need to like put that on a t-shirt, that Black women are brilliant, but not boundless. That is some real wisdom and truth. So thank you for sharing that. Irma, shout out to Irma.
Irma, I'm just put Irma. And Irma's here also.
You know, continuing to think about intersectionality, I imagine that there's so many folks in our community, specifically folks that you all serve at Affinity, who, you know, we're in Pride Month. We are dealing with so many different conflicting feelings at once. You know, we're sitting at the intersections of race, age, gender identity, queerness. And in Pride Month right now, we have some milestones to celebrate. You know, 2 days ago, the Supreme Court ruled that LGBTQ people are protected against workplace discrimination, which is great. But in the last week, we've also seen Black people, and specifically Black trans people, murdered. We know that Dominique Remy Fells was just murdered. We know Rhea Milton was just murdered. We know Rayshard Brooks. And it's this kind of double sort of, you know, it's sort of interlocking sense of feelings that you're trying to grapple with at once, where we're trying to be, you know, hopeful and celebrate, you know, progress that our community has made, but also really acknowledge that there's still so much tragedy and so much work left to do. Yeah. How do you, as a leader, how do you grapple with these complex feelings and these conflicting feelings, and what either message do you tell yourself and your organization, or what would you tell others in terms of how can we deal with both of these things, and even further, how can we center the voices of those really at the margins of the work that we do?
Yeah. I think one of the first things, first of all, thank you for that question. And I think one of the first things that comes to mind for me is that we hold these things, you know, in tandem, that none of us are a binary. So there's no such thing as today I'm only going to experience joy and joy only, and I won't have any other feeling, and I get to make that choice. I think what's more closer to reality is today I'm going to experience joy. Oh no, then I also feel frustrated because it is. Now I'm having a panic attack, but I am really happy about this. Now I'm pissed because I watched the news, you know, like it's just kind of like that's what it means to be human. And so I think as a leader, one of my main sort of priorities is to ensure that we're always encouraging people to feel all of those feelings, and that we're creating spaces where people can experience those feelings without feeling like they're being shamed or critiqued, right? Because we don't want any of that toxic positivity culture at Affinity. We don't want any of that toxic positivity culture on our social media or anything like that. And when someone comes to a program or like even post a comment on a page and they say, hey, you know what? I'm scared, or I'm feeling frustrated, or I feel really angry. There's no like, oh, well, don't feel that way. It's more like, hey, you know what? I hear you. I hear you. And we're here for you. And we're here to support you in all your complexities as a person. And there's no sort of like purity politics, where in order for you to be in this space, you have to be performing, doing some performance of being someone else that you're not. It's that, hey, if we really are pushing against, especially systems of racism, then that means that we are creating structures that completely combat and are completely opposed to white supremacy culture, which means in this space, you can be free and you can be open and you can be loved as the full person that you are, as opposed to it being, we're sort of constructing some sort of identity for you, and then policing you, because that's just not what we're about.
Great answer. Thank you for sharing that perspective. I think that's really important for us to remember. Switching gears to just thinking about all the programs that Affinity administers and the approach that you all take. I know it is a very community-centered, volunteer-led approach, and I saw one of Irma's comments that elders lift you up.
Yeah, they do.
Talk about the approach that you all take in terms of being volunteer-led, and what is so unique about it, and why it also in turn makes it so effective.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes it so unique is that the volunteers are also leaders in our organization. So, you know, I've worked at a lot of nonprofits, and I find that oftentimes volunteers, either spoken or unspoken, are seen at the bottom of some sort of, and specifically within our, oh, did you pause for a second? Okay.
So sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I paused like 5 times during this. I'm like, okay, let's just keep going. um, but I think specifically, within our organization, volunteers are also leaders. So it's not we're telling you what to do and we're telling you how to lead your groups and we're telling you how to show up in community. It's more so, hey, what do you all think about this decision that we're making? What do you all need from us as an organization? How can we continue to support you? And then again, because we talked earlier about holding many things, that also means not just as an organization saying, how can we support you? But that also means, hey, you know what? You've been here 15 years. Please give me some insight because I know you hold so much wisdom. And I want to be able to soak up that wisdom as much as possible, as much as you have the capacity, and in a way that still honors you as a person. But like I respect and celebrate the fact that you've been here for all this time. And there's so many things that you know that I haven't learned yet. So like not only what can I offer you, what do you need, but also like because I think community is about give and take. There's also that, hey, what I need from you is your wisdom as a Black lesbian woman who's been doing this for a long time, who's been herself for a long time. Can you like guide me? Can you encourage me and acknowledge me? And I think that's important too.
I love that. I wish I could add like heart reactions, but I don't think I can. But throughout all of your answers, I've been wanting to do that. But I think that's such good wisdom to share with others, especially other young people who might be on this, who might be watching right now. That takes a level of humility that us as younger leaders to really understand and appreciate that there's so much wisdom and so much that our elders and those who've come before us have experienced and can share. It's not all about what's the next thing. So that approach that makes so much sense to me. That's really inspiring.
And I see that one of our board members who's on right now, Anna Deshawn, wrote, shared leadership is everything. And
Yes.
It really is.
Yes. I love that the idea that volunteers are also leaders.
Yeah.
Amazing. So as a leader in the community, and there's so much going on, and obviously you have tons of wisdom and knowledge to share yourself, but are there voices or resources that you turn to, or are there other organizations and leaders either in Chicago or elsewhere in the space that you think are doing good work or that you look to for inspiration or guidance?
Oh, definitely. I love this question. For sure. So Lasiah Wade of Race Based Alliance is one of those people. Amani Rupert Gordon, who's at NCLR. Kim Hunt, who I recently just met over email, but recently sort of like actually saw for the first time live on a panel that we did together this morning. So Kim Hunt of Pride Action Tank. There's also other folks who I look up to. Desiree Attaway, who's a really powerful and amazing racial justice educator. There's Rachel Ricketts, who is a Black queer woman who lives in Canada, who does a lot of work around anti-racism and who is so supportive. All these people are so amazing and so supportive and so brilliant. I would also have to say every single member of our board at Affinity, and Irma too, as a program coordinator, are people that I look to for guidance. And maybe they don't know that yet, because I've only been here officially like a week. But but it is, I really do look to them. Sometimes I'll read their posts on social media and I'm like, oh my God, yes, okay. I'm learning something from this. I'm gathering, because we're still in the space of building a relationship. But I would count all of these people as people that I look up to, that I'm like, wow, I admire you as a person. I celebrate you. And I'm honored that I get to work alongside you, that I get to exist alongside you.
I love that. Thank you. And again, for those who just joined us, my name is Aditi Hardikar with the Tegan and Sara Foundation Board of Directors, here with Mackenzie Mack, the Executive Director of Affinity Community Services. Mackenzie, I want to thank you for all of this great perspective that you've shared with us, acknowledging our history, putting that in the context of today, and then also sharing about how the work of Affinity has and continues to lift up our community. And so I would love to hear from you. What are the ways in which those watching, those who are going to watch this on IGTV later, can support you? I know you have an exciting Pride Month fundraising campaign, but I'm sure there's tons of other ways. Please let us know how we can support you.
Okay, come on with this question. Thank you. I love these questions and I love this culminating question. So right now, currently, we're running a 25 and beyond campaign. So initially our goal was to raise $25,000 for Pride Month. And we reached $25,000 within less than 10 days. So now we've doubled it to 50K. So we're attempting to raise $50,000 by June 30th. Folks have been so supportive and so helpful. And for people that might want to learn more about the campaign, they can go to bit.ly/25 and beyond. It's also in our bio on our Instagram page at affinity_CS. If people want to learn more about our organization, they can go to affinity95.org. They can follow us on Twitter at AffinityCS. You know, and also we also have a donate button on our website as well. So you can click that bright pink donate button. You can't miss it. And you can set up a recurring donation to our organization because we love that. And I think, you know, besides that, I think letting people know who we are, you know, if folks are making lists and they're saying, hey, these are Black Black-led LGBTQ organizations, please put us on the list. You know, let people know that we've been doing this work for 25 years and that we are working to make it to another 25, that we have no plans in giving up anytime soon. And that's how we can be supported.
Amazing. I can't believe you've only been ED for a week. You sound like a pro. I mean, you are a pro, but it seems like the way that you're talking about everything that the organization is doing and how to donate, it's pretty amazing.
I've been studying. Especially before an interview, yeah.
Well, since we have a couple of minutes, the last question that I had put in my back pocket in case there was time is, what's giving you hope?
Oh, wow. Seeing Black people protesting in the streets is giving me hope. And like non-Black folks of color and white folks who are allies to the Black Lives Matter movement gives me so much hope, and it makes me so proud. Seeing Black trans women be leaders. So I mentioned Lasiyah Wade. Raquel Willis is somebody else who I follow and I have so much admiration and respect for. Janet Mock is somebody who I have so much admiration and respect for. And a number of other folks who may not have 1,000 followers on Instagram, but who are leading, right? Because we know that leadership is not something that comes in quantity, but it's something that comes in quality. And it's about ideology, right? So those things are giving me hope. I had a meeting earlier today with two of our peer leads from our Trailblazers group, Phyllis and Toy, and they're amazing. They said they were going to try to get on here. I don't know if they're able to, but it's okay. We could get the video and send it to them if that's possible. But talking to them for an hour about their experiences at Affinity made me feel nourished, and it made me feel seen. I think in addition to that, being able to work with such an amazing team at Affinity, Anna Deshawn, Aisha Davis, Jazz Thurman, Irma, Stanley, I hope I'm saying your last name correctly, Irma, love you. And that also gives me hope because then I know that, you know, I'm not doing this work alone. But I have a whole community of people who are here for me. Also, Mary Morton, I have to name as well, who's an incredible, incredible human being who's so brilliant. If you look up Mary Morton, you'll get so many hits on Google. Mary Morton has done so much for LGBTQ communities, period, for Black people, period, and also for Black queer women specifically, and as an incredible individual. So I think being able to see these people and see what they're accomplishing makes me fired up. And I think on my very first day when, you know, I went to the board and we decided to go on with this fundraiser, I thought, you know what? Why wait? Let's do it now. You know, let's take advantage of this momentum that we have. And I don't know what's going to happen, but like, I believe in Affinity, you know, and I believe that we are Affinity. So let's do that work.
That's amazing. Well, what a great place to end. Mackenzie, I can't thank you enough for taking time to chat with us, for all the work that you do for our community and so many who look to you. Please continue to let us know how we can support you. We will have this video up, and we'll also make sure we link to Affinity's Instagram account so folks can check y'all out, your program, donate if they can. And again, it was so great to meet you virtually, and hopefully we can meet in person sometime soon in the city.
I love that. Over brunch on the South.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching. Thanks, Tegan and Sara Foundation.